A lot of hard work, no doubt, went into the research behind that talk. We're so privileged to be able to experience it. We have now some time for questions. And Sarah will be walking around with a mic so that we should be able to hear your questions.
Thank you. I just want to say that was a marvelous talk. I enjoyed it immensely. I, like probably a lot of people in here, have been volunteering in the caucuses and interacting with people from around the world who've come to Iowa. And one thing that I've talked to several people about is their curiosity about America's highly religious sort of society. And one thing I've heard from several people is, aren't these ideas that we draw from, that I personally draw, and I know a lot of people draw, from our religious background, that translate into our society, our government, our education, whatever, aren't these just good ideas in the abstract? I mean, why do we place such a focus on the religious origin of these ideas that are, carried out in Europe and many secular societies just as effectively as here? Is there something about the fact that these have religious origins in America that is relevant to their being carried out by us?
Well, a good question and a hard question. Yeah, I mean, I think that we would find, to begin with, we would probably find little agreement over which ideas are the good ideas, even ideas that are explicitly drawn from religious tradition. But the public presentation or the expression of loyalty to certain religious ideas serves purposes other than only serving those ideas. Obviously, they serve to indicate group identity, I think, which is their primary purpose for being, the way they are primarily used in politics at the moment, letting people know I'm one of you, or trying to let people know I'm one of you, in very explicit ways, in ways that, depending on how experienced one is in watching these types of statements made, sometimes ring true and sometimes ring not so true. So that's what I think that that is their primary purpose or usefulness now, is to let people know I am one of you, or and this person is not one of you, to make those types of statements. But certainly the ideas that I hope that as a society that we agree with are good ideas, and they do have roots in traditions that predate the Republic, and that we are drawing from a well that is often has religious roots, but not exclusively so.
Other questions?
I read recently that Jefferson was tremendously in debt. Is the reason that he sold that library to alleviate some of his debt?
Yes. He did not give the government a good deal on it. And the reason, though I highlighted the religious objections to the purchase of the library, there were also reasons that the country was in debt. And so the United States had just finished a costly war, was wrapping up the war with Britain, was deeply in debt, and the idea that at that point you would buy a lot of these books from Jefferson and not at a bargain price was infuriating to his political opponents, and the idea that his party was just going to pass this to help Jefferson's personal finances was infuriating. And I can see, in fact, why many would object to some of the books that Jefferson was selling. It just didn't seem like, at this point in American history, what did not seem like this is something that should have been a priority. But seen from a century later or 2 centuries later, when that becomes the Library of Congress, which becomes an essential cultural institution in this country, it makes more sense. But at the time, I can understand why his opponents were just apoplectic about it. They just could not wrap their heads around spending this kind of money. And Jefferson also did not sell all his books. He kept the best books for himself. The other thing, since we're on the topic of Jefferson, a book book not included in the sale of his books to the Library of Congress or to the government at the time. He had not published yet, but is probably one of his more significant expressions of his own religious ideas. And this is a book that's popularly known now as the Jefferson Bible. Some of you know it, I would guess. Those of you who don't know it, during the same period when Jefferson was in retirement at Monticello, he was doing a lot of thinking about his own religious ideas. And one of his projects was to take several copies of the New Testament, several different editions, and to go through it with a razor blade, and simply to cut out the things that he did not agree with, and to take the parts he did agree with and to paste them all into a book that he then compiled and called The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth. And so this book, this original copy that he created, will also be part of the Smithsonian exhibit that I'm putting together. And this too has a fascinating history in terms of the changing, what has changed in American life about acceptable religious ideas. Jefferson did not want this book published in his lifetime because he thought it would be going too far, even for him, even for a known heretic. But his descendants did publish it after his death. And for the first 50 years in the 20th century, this book was published, and a copy of the Jefferson Bible was given to every senator who took the oath of office. This would not fly today. This is not a book that would be embraced by many today. And so it's remarkable to see the ways in which the religious ideas that are popular move in and out of seeming more conservative and less conservative, more liberal and less liberal. It's a remarkable thing to see through my eyes.
There's a book on Jefferson's Quran by Denise, I think, Spellman, and in it she alludes to a debate that I gathered was probably only among some intellectuals about whether or not a Muslim could be president in those days. And so I was wondering if you'd ever run across that and if you could say some more about it.
Yeah, and so, in these debates that you hear, they basically talking about the limits of religious freedom, or would there be limits of religious freedom, and could there be religious tests for holding public office, for example. And those who strongly felt there could not be any religious tests at all would list the people they considered most outlandishly beyond the pale of what was acceptable in terms of religious belief at the time. So they would say, well, even an atheist, which at the time was saying quite a lot, even an atheist could be president, or a deist, or even, as they would often term Muslims at the time, even a Turk. Could a Turk be president, they would say. And those who thought that it should be the case would say, yes, even though it was only theoretical at that time. Because, and this is the other interesting part about it, the people having those conversations were, I would guess, mostly oblivious or simply did not care that there were actual living Muslims in the country at the time, because they were all enslaved, or the vast majority of them were enslaved. So the idea that Islam was a living religion in America at the time was not part of those conversations. Those conversations were basically saying, is there anyone who is beyond the bounds of religious freedom as we're talking about? And the answer was continually no. But we should also keep in mind that was only at the federal level, because religious tests existed at the state level for years and years after. And so all of those discussions were mainly about at the federal level, and they did nothing to change the fact that at the state level you still had to pass a religious test. Some of those laws are still on the books at the state level, by the way. I mean, some states still have laws on the books that say you cannot be an atheist in public office. And it's only a matter of time when someone needs to have a lawsuit to change the law, et cetera, and so it's just a matter of time for that to happen.
We, in this state, have been hearing off and on about the Christian origins of our nation and how it's important to maintain the integrity of that. As I read some of the writings of the quote-unquote founding fathers, I've yet to find one that would be what we call an evangelical or conservative Christian. Were any of them of that belief system, or were all of them trending towards deism?
No, you look at someone like John Adams. John Adams considered himself very much a church-going animal, I think is his phrase. And he and Jefferson had a fascinating correspondence late in their lives about this. And so it's and you also have to keep in mind that the way in which conservative Christianity is expressed today did not really exist in the same way at the time. And so to look for someone who sounds like the advocates of the Christian nation idea today, you're not really going to find them because the terms, it wasn't really the same situation. So as with any discussion of the Founding Fathers, you can find, they wrote so much, you can find what you're looking for if you go looking.
Well, like with Adams, I read some of those letters, and I expected him to be the one who would be a conventional conservative Christian, and then there was a line in one of the letters saying that if I am a genuine Christian, it is because I do what is right and I avoid what is wrong. And that would not be considered evangelical Christianity today.
Well, a lot of the voices that would sound more like contemporary evangelical Christianity would be the early Baptists. And the early Baptists were also a group that was not embraced by the majority. They were a persecuted minority at the time. And so the places in which you find those voices are often those who were agitating for the rights of Baptists, for example, writing letters to people like James Madison and saying, don't forget religious liberty because of what is happening to the Baptists. So those are the types of voices that you would find. But none of those, someone like John Leland, for example, the Baptist minister, John Leland, but those were not the men signing the Declaration of Independence or writing the Constitution, because at the time they were a persecuted minority.
Is there one more question?
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
And thank you finally on behalf of DMARC and Drake for attending this afternoon. This has been a wonderful event. I hope for all of you. Look for future events. We have your email addresses. You will hear from us again. And we will also be sending you a survey about today's event so that we can plan better in the future. Thank you so much.